So welcome to the AEC Hive podcast. I'm Ralph Montague. I'm a director at ArcDocs, one of the founders of AEC Hive. And I'm joined today with John Egan, fellow co-founder of the AEC Hive and CEO of BIM Launcher. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
I think you've done a fair overview of me there.
Okay, we're very excited today to have two very special guests who are literally builders of communities in the AEC sector, which is amazing. It's exactly what AEC Hive attempting to do. So Adam Menter and Rachel Hartley are both program managers of the Autodesk Group Network. And we're really excited to have you with us today and to speak about innovation in the AEC sector and building a community within that sector that is pushing innovation. So welcome both of you. Would you like to introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of background about each of your careers and how you got to this amazing position?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ralph and John, for having us. It's a really exciting opportunity, I think, to share and looking forward to see where this conversation goes. So I am Rachel Hartley, and I joined Autodesk about just 8 months ago to build the Autodesk Group Network program. I come from a marketing business background for my undergrad at The Ohio State University and studied a design thinking minor as well. So it's been a really unique opportunity to step into this community space and the AEC industry among the other industries that Autodesk serves to apply my background into building communities. So I am just entering the space, but learning quickly, and I think bringing a very unique perspective to collaboration and community building in the AEC industry.
I'm Adam. I've worked at Autodesk for actually about 10 years. And I started at Autodesk working in the sustainability group, working on sustainable design education. So some projects that I've worked on that some of your listeners might be familiar with is the Autodesk Sustainability Workshop, where we were teaching sustainable design workflows. That included the Building Performance Analysis Certificate program. I've also worked on Autodesk University, specifically online platforms for Autodesk University. By working on learning, I really got into community, a really core way that people learn and way that people connect and are motivated to learn. So it's been really wonderful to build the Autodesk Group Network program with Rachel over the past year.
That's excellent. Well done. I mean, that's quite interesting. What we want to talk about today is the challenge of innovation in the AEC sector. And by that, I mean, is innovation in the AEC sector is quite low, or formal innovation anyway. I mean, the sector is innovative in what it does. I mean, in terms of building buildings and other incredible pieces of infrastructure. You know, that innovation tends to happen at a project level and not across the sector in general. So, Rachel, like maybe one of the first questions, because you're new to this sector, you come from a different background in marketing and various other things. And what's your initial sort of experience of this sector? Do you see it as a highly innovative sector, or do you share our views about the struggles?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming at it with this new perspective, I see it as a spectrum of how people are engaging and innovating in the AEC, because I think there are the top innovators, I think like yourself, who are building these communities and really pushing to get standards or, new processes and workflows and innovating in that sense. But I think there are a lot of barriers to building these communities and having it expand out of your like niche local area or the region that you are in. So I think being able to lower some of those barriers and understanding like what those barriers to innovation are. And then I think that's why I'm really excited working on the Autodesk Group Network program, because we're in a unique position to see all of that activity that's happening and then helping support and empower the community in the right ways that they need to once we really learn and evolve to understand what those barriers are.
And Adam, I mean, you have a different perspective. So you come from a very technical engineering background and sustainability analysis, which is quite innovative in itself. That we do these thorough investigations into how buildings and pieces of infrastructure might perform once constructed. So I suppose you do see at that end like lots of innovation happening. But what's your sense of the general sector, like having been involved with Autodesk for, that many years?
So I have a mechanical engineering degree. I've never worked in the building sector directly. It's my interaction with it has been through Autodesk, and I did dive into all the workflows that Autodesk offered for green building design in my work on the sustainability team, and I saw a disconnect between what the tools were capable of and what firms actually had the appetite and time to do. It's not a technology problem, and I think one of the things I've learned by sort of being adjacent to this industry and doing actually a lot of customer research to try to understand customer problems is that it's such a complex ecosystem for the way work gets done. There's, nested scales of organizations with legal contracts, and everybody's trying to reduce their risk. And then you've got new technology that has this potential to open up new ways of working. And then it runs into that whole ecosystem, including, for example, hierarchies and power structures within companies, and older people within the organization or sort of more director level folks that may not understand like the potential of technology. And so in my career at Autodesk, I've had an affinity towards the people that are really pushing the boundaries, and a lot of those people end up feeling pretty disempowered within these structures, so end up popping out of them.
Yeah,
and
it's a shame.
And I think that there's this incredible potential, and Autodesk tools can do a lot. And it's been really interesting to see, what Autodesk is saying is possible, and like what everybody should be doing in industry, and like basically like the marketing getting ahead of where the industry is, like with BIM, for example. My time here has sort of been, I've seen the explosion of BIM, but I also have seen backlash against it, because the promise of BIM and then the reality of it working in these complex environments causes a little dissonance. So I'm actually really happy to be working in community where we can, because I think that there actually is something really healthy about showing the promise and the potential, but then working with real people on the ground to realize that potential. Actually, I think community is a wonderful place where that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. There's disconnect between the capability of the technologies that are already available. So, I mean, they don't even need to be invented. They're already there. And then the actual way people are working. And climate and sustainability are probably one of the biggest challenges the world faces and our sector faces. As a sector, we're incredibly wasteful in the way we do things and harmful to the environment. I mean, the construction sector is responsible for, I think it's 40% of the CO2 emissions, continuously use very environmentally harmful processes to make materials and then end up wasting most of those materials and putting them back in the ground. And the industry is slow and it's expensive because of the complex structures you mentioned there. So, I mean, that's one of the things that John and I are trying to tackle through this group. Maybe the innovations are not about inventing new technologies, but the innovations are using existing technologies in new ways. So that's a really interesting point you made, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Adam, that you've raised the point that there is a huge disconnect between the way that the industry operates today. So, like in past podcasts, we've had discussions that have come to the conclusion that construction has its own ecosystem. It almost has its own economy. It has its own environment and doesn't really operate in a very logical way, especially for newcomers to the industry. And at the end of the last podcast, I even came to the conclusion of saying, look, I'm actually feeling disempowered by the industry, and I would think that I've been working at the forefront of solutions development, at least as far as I'm concerned, with at least trying out testing and bringing new and emerging technologies to the market. It's really interesting that obviously you've identified that people are taking a step back from this industry practice, and I'm wondering, do you have any insight or idea or predictions about how how we can bring people back into the industry and start to, I suppose, leapfrog this idea of innovation within the industry?
It's a really interesting question. Again, I'll caveat my answer by saying that I'm at least one step removed from how this work happens on the ground. But one thing I'd say is that I'd be pretty hesitant to say that the construction industry is not logical. I think it has a different logic, and part of becoming a more innovative and connected industry is for each different party in the ecosystem to understand the logic of the other, because humans are actually really good making decisions based on the environments that they're in. The environments that construction firms are in might be very different than the environments that you're in. And I think architects have a brilliant ability to create space and structures for people. I mean, that's kind of what architecture is. But I'd be wary of, an architect trying to architect how construction should be done without a more equal coming together. There's so much expertise embedded within, the boots on the ground people in this process. And we talk about being disempowered. It's like those people, how can we have information flowing up from construction in ways where they feel like they're, not just robotic arm of an architect in an ivory tower?
With regards to what I meant by logic there, what I was talking about was common sense logic and really the non-intuitiveness of the relationships of different actors in the construction industry. So, for instance, with regards to, let's talk about making a design process more efficient, to the logical person in the context, if I'm talking about logic, that would bring a higher level of productivity, it would become less wasteful, would result in a less wasteful process. And what I mean there is the people that are making these decisions or that are kind of trying to innovate within the industry have to almost take into account that the architect gets paid their fee by maybe their hourly, the amount of days that they spend on the project. So really, yes, a certain innovation might be more productive and less wasteful, but equally it might be adopted by the architect because it might take away from their value add to the project. So
just to bring the conversation around to community building, like one of the very obvious things about the AEC sector is that over the years it has become more and more fragmented and specialized and therefore siloed. So people have very specialized functions within the overall process, and sometimes that's all they're focused on is their specialized function without really considering completely the whole process from end to end in kind of loose discussion. So community and collaboration are challenged, I think, in the sector, in that environment. And people, because they're operating in their silos and often in competition with their peers, let's just say that doesn't really help community building or sharing of information or strong collaboration. So I suppose that's one of the things we're trying to do is break that model slightly by trying to get people talking to each other in little work groups, non-threatening environments where they feel comfortable to share their knowledge, share what they're doing, share their pain that they're experiencing and their problems, discuss potential solutions with people maybe outside of their silo. So it's great what you guys are doing, with the Autodesk community program and the Autodesk group network, because, that's exactly what you're promoting, is to build this global network of those types of people who are willing to get together and share and speak. And what are the aspirations of the big thing you're trying to achieve? What problem are you trying to solve?
I mean, honestly, I think you teed it up really great right there. Just to give the full and vision of the group network, it's really where a world where people connect in community to share knowledge and collaborate across firms and industries to improve the use of design technology and make a better world. So, I mean, I see this alignment, directly with the AEC Hive and what you all are trying to do. I think we are working on, last year was really setting the foundation of the program and getting our handle on building relationships with our user groups and online virtual group leaders who are building these communities. And then this year, it's really on scaling those relationships, deepening those with the top leaders that are managing and building these communities, and scaling our offerings to have tangible support and tools that we can give.
Sorry, Rachel. Sorry for interrupting you there. My connection cut out and I thought that you had stopped talking.
No worries.
So you triggered something with me there when you talked about providing tools and providing a platform to the community. I'd be really interested in what you're working on to date and how you see that maturing, and I mean the drivers behind putting those tools in place.
Yeah. So what we have currently is a group leader hub. And so when a group leader adds their group or community into the group network, they are added to this conversation space where they can pose questions to other group leaders. We've seen a lot more engagement recently on people, they're like, hey, we have less engagement, or we don't know how to spur a conversation between our members, have that two-way dialogue facilitation. Does anyone have, tips and tricks on this? So it's at that level of having group leaders communicating on that peer-to-peer level. I think it's also been a great space for now to collect best practices and resources that our most experienced groups have created over the years. For example, the UK Dynamo user group is one of the most mature groups that is really having that collaboration across AEC as the committee members come from, all different industry backgrounds. But I think that contributes to the success of their group and the quality of their presentations. And so having their resources and their best practices, we're able to give that to other group leaders through this group leader hub. I think there's also tangible resources that we are working on building and fine-tuning on helping launch a new group. So what does it take to build a community? What are the things you should be considering? How do you, what website do you get up? What are live streaming tools? Things of that nature. And so at the ground, that can spur new communities to be built with kind of a step-by-step guide to get going there.
A lot of the stuff that Rachel is talking about is really just meeting groups where they are and providing tools that will help them be successful with their groups kind of on their terms. We're also really trying to connect with industry leaders and groups that are trying to do interesting things. So I'd actually, I'd put AEC Hive in that camp of, how can people come together and not just share knowledge, but actually build things together? And how can groups start to be more involved with explicit industry efforts like building smart? That's a space that we're really curious about and might be, part of the adjacent possible of kind of helping more tangibly in those areas and helping that type of work happen in community. But that's more of a sort of next year thing, I'd guess, because there's a lot of just basic groundwork that we're really still setting.
Yeah, and I think, that's an interesting point you made there, Adam. Just this idea of people coming together and not just presenting stuff they're doing at the moment, but test ideas and try and make things. And I was actually just thinking there, you mentioned earlier about all the amazing technology that Autodesk has, which is being underused and probably being underused because people don't know, it exists, and because they haven't got the time to sort of explore and test. And unaware of what it can do. So I think I often see this. People come together and they almost reinventing the wheel because, they think I have this problem. I'm trying to solve this problem, and my current set of tools that I have doesn't seem to deal with that. And so let me go off and make a new tool. Meanwhile, it probably exists already. I was just wondering what sort of role the Autodesk group network and community could play in getting the message out there of what the capabilities already exist and are available, and how can people explore those without committing to purchasing a license up front before trying to test it. Is it
Rachel,
is it
do you want to take that
is
one?
it that some of the Autodesk technical experts with the knowledge have to engage with these activities and communities and show their wares or thinking about it?
I think it's an interest. It's that we're really taking a really balanced approach to this, because I think when Autodesk steps into this space too much, it becomes more of, that marketing sales pitch where, that will instantly kill and die out a community. But it is important to have good connections with product teams and being able to listen and understand what these challenges are directly from the customers or, these people that are engaging in these communities. And then having that be valuable feedback that goes into the product teams and then is creating, giving better answers to what that challenge or, where they're stuck in a workflow. So I think that is a value add way and a relationship that we can work on bridging. So I really see us and the group network as like a connector between people and, just connecting the dots. We're at a unique position to see the high level and get the right people talking. And so I think that is kind of our role, one of our roles in helping people solve or work through those challenges.
A really good example is the Forge team have these accelerator programs, where people get it's like a week-long hackathon, if you like. Now, obviously, that's an Autodesk event where people are going and focusing on a particular Autodesk product. But I was wondering, there might be times where you need to flip that around and say, instead of having an Autodesk event focused on one product, maybe an Autodesk person with some expertise needs to participate in a more open, non-vendor focused event. Yeah.
We see, for example, going back to the UK Dynamo user group, they've hosted, hackathons in the past, and, they work closely with the Dynamo product team, now with us, and even the Forge Accelerator communities, and trying to see how can Forge be involved in their hackathon that they are hosting. Is it as, judges, or just really sitting in and listening to what's everyone proposing? What did they build during the time? What are new ideas that are there? And I think just at that level, that is really powerful, and a strong and healthy and successful relationship between the community, between, product teams, and even with us as the group network, just entering, that ecosystem.
Or even participating. The format of the AEC Hive events is people forming these little work groups and coming together and, just for a sort of an intense day of testing out an idea. It doesn't have to be technology. It could be around process. It could be around understanding new ways of working or, workflows, anything. But it would be great to see amongst that some of the Autodesk people with these great tools that you're talking about and, the expertise participating somehow with those work groups, whether it's being one of the work groups doing something so that other people can see it as well, or even just individuals participating in some of the work groups that are formed and bringing some solutions to those.
Absolutely. I think we talked about the potential of the group network to bridge outside of Autodesk. It actually also has a potential to bridge groups and functions inside of Autodesk. So oftentimes the people that are most effective at doing that kind of work in the community. They may not know about the opportunities, may not be part of their goals for the quarter, that sort of thing. So that's the type of internal change and awareness that we'll be looking to catalyze within Autodesk.
And John and I have had a lot of discussions about this idea of community building, and I mean the reason we came up with this AEC Hive, we were talking about how swarms work, where whether it's bees or birds or whatever, where individuals come together as a group, then they have a lot more dynamic than individuals sitting at home trying things out. So it was this coming together, and then we also had this image of tribes. When a tribe functions as a community, they become stronger together than they do as individuals, and within that sort of tribe image, you have people of different capabilities, different expertise, but they're all supporting each other, and you have a healthy tribe. They're looking out for each other, and they're trying to help each other, and there's a sharing, and there's a strong collaboration, and there's an appreciation for the different levels of expertise people bring. And if you have an unhealthy community, then people are more selfish, and they're more closed and trying to keep things to themselves. And just in terms of building community, and I'm sure you've thought about these things as well, what sort of advice could you give AEC Hive, which is a very new initiative, about building this kind of culture, if you like, of sharing, collaboration, appreciation for people's talents and skills? And
yeah, I mean, I think the level of keeping that culture in a healthy community space, I think it's being really in tune with who your members are and who you have coming and reaching out and participating in your community space. I think when you lose sight of what skill level your members at, or what experience and expertise, industry backgrounds, you can leave people out. I think from what I've seen so far with groups that we've interacted with in the network, there are some that have grown starting at a very beginner level, and then they move and evolve really fast, where now it's at that top level of experience, definitely considered experts. And when new members try to come in and join, it's just way too over their head. They can't even engage in the conversation. They feel disempowered. They already feel behind. So it's really, I think, having a delicate approach to driving engagement and presentations, or just information that can cater to all the different levels of experience.
what do you think, Adam? Is community a culture thing, and is innovation a culture thing that has to be grown?
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. One thing I'd add, I really liked Rachel's answer around making sure that you're understanding where everyone in the community is and you're nurturing folks along. I think another thing that's really important is to understand people's goals and understand where those goals are similar. And where those goals are similar, these types of community spaces can create structure to do work together or to support each other. And that I think is one of the founding values, and the way value flows within structures like a tribe, is how are we stronger together. And another thing about tribes is that they're together for the long haul in a way, and that's actually one of the things that's been really inspiring for me about working within the Autodesk community, is that there's a lot of people that have been part of this community for a long time, and they do act like a tribe, and they help each other out, and they know each other. And so how can you foster that type of environment and sort of supportive? How are people supporting each other? How are people contributing to each other's projects and goals in ways that really add value to each individual member? Because it's a lot about relationships, and it's a lot about helping people tap into their goals and their purpose. And when that stuff is working, it's actually magical.
I mean, what's been great, what you guys have been doing with the program in the last I don't know when the program started, but was it 18 months ago or?
We had the official launch in November at Autodesk University, Las Vegas, but in April was when we started, we would say, I guess, a bit of a soft launch, engaging with groups in a
what's been great to see, like, and what you guys have been doing is firstly this connecting of groups. So, I mean, we obviously have a few groups in Ireland, but, and all these groups are sort of operating independently, but you've created those connections, which is firstly fantastic. And then you've been listening as well. I think you had a great event at AU last year, getting feedback from people. What are your plans this year? Are you doing more of those connecting the dot events? At AU London?
AU London. We definitely will be hosting a similar meetup. I also have submitted a proposal to have a panel specifically to building and leading, successful user group communities. Would really hope that brings to light maybe some new groups or surfaces a motivation for people to maybe start and lead a new community. So I think those are two specific to AU London. I think we will also be looking at expanding and scaling our offerings as program benefits go. And so seeing what type of tools or investments in our platform that we can be making that will advance the promotion of group events and how you as group leaders are communicating with your community members. And those would be, I think, two top of mind growth of the network. Adam, do you have any additions?
The only thing I'd add is I think we're looking for opportunities to help co-host spaces and events. So the hackathon associated with Autodesk University events is something that I think we're pretty interested in, but sort of as you were alluding to earlier, Ralph, how can we create that as a space that's not Autodesk only space and it's really co-hosted by communities in the wild based on industry needs out there?
Well, I suppose that is the challenge, I suppose, for the vendors, because you are in competition with each other. But the market, I suppose, is looking for, what best solutions out there, rather than being too vendor focused.
Yeah, that's one thing that we actually changed in the even legal terms for the group network. When we had an initial program around user groups at Autodesk, it was pretty explicit that you could only talk about Autodesk technologies, and we've opened that up because we recognize that Autodesk technology is always used within ecosystems that involve other tools. And if we're trying to limit conversation to only Autodesk technology, we're actually operating in a fictional world.
Which is great. I think that's a good approach, being open. John's a big open source advocate. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think your last comment there, Adam, about like ecosystems and not just containing Autodesk products is a very important one. I think that, to go back to Ralph's point about this idea of tribes and people coming together to work with one another around, a common set of shared goals, to do something better, will more than likely involve other products that could be competitors, it could be, new emerging technologies, whatever it may be. I'm just wondering, how is Autodesk and the Autodesk Group network making sufficient precautions to not try to own the community and try and neutralize it enough so that anybody feels that they can engage without feeling like they're just a cog within the Autodesk marketing machine?
I think that is a very valid question, because I guess I will preface and start it with before we even fully built the program, we, engaged with 16 or so group leaders and asked them, is this a space that we should be entering? How should we be supporting so that the power is still in the community? It is still led by the community. and Autodesk is just, a supporting leg and arm to your efforts. And so that is really the foundation and mindset that we have been taking this entire time as we continue to build out the program. And what we will always anchor back to is that, the control is within the community and how it's led and run. So, we offer, different affiliation or, program branding that groups can add to their community if they wish, but it's not something that is required. And so I think it's just continually to listen to our community group leaders and hear what they want and how we should be stepping in, and then letting them choose how they articulate that out and present Autodesk support and their affiliation to the group network.
Okay, so just to clarify there, the group network are groups that support Autodesk products, or are they a range of different groups from within and in Autodesk and outside Autodesk?
Yeah, so the group network is a global network of all of our user groups, developer groups, and online groups. And this can be customer led. It can be led by partner channels and resellers, or it could be led by, internal Autodesk teams, such as the virtual webinars. So the majority of our groups are customer led, but it's just a network of each of these individual user communities.
And I think that what Rachel was saying in terms of the genesis of the program is, I think in my mind, pretty important in terms of the roots of this program really come from how do we support group leaders and how do we support them to meet their goals. And if we anchor to that, I think there's a pretty strong chance that we're going to be adding value to the community and to the industry. And so I think a lot of it comes down to maintaining that ethos and then setting the cultural tone for how this program works, both in the community and within Autodesk. And actually, I'd say one important aspect of that actually is that Rachel and I like this program and we like working together. And that's the same type of dynamic that we see out in groups that are successful, is that they like the things that they're doing and they like working together. So the more that we can keep that up, I think the more natural that dynamic will be.
Like obviously the group network has a marketing function. In other words, it's there to connect with the customers and get feedback, but it also has an education function of helping in connecting all these groups, you're helping people to learn from each other. So which division the group network falls under, marketing or education or both? Or for instance, I know there's a lot of interesting educational material that Autodesk produces, which often doesn't make its way to the market because people are unaware of what's available and where it is. And so do you see yourselves having a marketing and education function, or is it one stronger than the other?
So we actually sit within our platform team, interestingly enough, where we're aligned with the Autodesk forums and the Autodesk Knowledge Network and the Expert Elite program. And so those are who we're tied in the org closely with. I personally see us in between, this help, learning, support, and marketing. So I really just find us kind of right in the middle. And again, it just goes back to being that connection point between the two departments. I have a different perspective on that.
No, I think you said it really well.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the value of innovation. In the AEC sector, I think the investment into innovation is very low. It's probably 1 or 2%, of GDP or turnover. So it's in most people's minds in the AEC sector. Obviously, that means innovation is not seen as something valuable that's worth investing in time into or money into. I wondered if either of you had some thoughts on the value of innovation and what people should be doing to rethink the value of innovation.
I've thought a lot about innovation. within Autodesk, what are the ways that we're good at innovating? What are the ways that we're not good at innovating? And actually increasingly outside of Autodesk too. So I actually did a co-presentation on innovation and BIM with some folks from Foster and Partners at the Autodesk University last year. I can send you all the link to that presentation. But I think in that presentation, what I learned from Foster and Partners is that that's a very innovative firm within the AEC world. And in order for them to really invest in innovation, showing the connection to business value and in terms of improved project outcome, more effective use of resources, that sort of thing, even at a place like Foster and Partners, is, table stakes for investing in innovation. So it's like getting good at really anchoring to, all right, we want to innovate in this direction. How's that going to help the top line, the bottom line, and the people within these structures?
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose Foster's wouldn't be the norm. I mean, they are, as you say, a very innovative company. I was just wondering how do we get the majority of companies in the sector who don't really consider the value of innovation, the message that innovation is something that's important to do, and it has value. It's worth investing time and money into finding new and better ways of doing things.
I mean, I think there's always going to be people on the leading edge of innovation, and there's always it's the diffusion of innovation curve. Actually, there's a wonderful book about this.
Crossing the chasm.
Exactly. And even within Foster and Partners, a lot of the things that we were talking about and exploring in that presentation, how do you structure teams? How do you create documentation? How do you understand analytics? Which are things that every firm is working on. And
any thoughts from your side, Rachel? The value of innovation?
I was just going to reiterate on the fact of that it really goes down to showing the value and how, like, the people who are making those decisions on investing in innovation or not. It's how do you help them see the value of it? And Adam and the work that he's been doing with Foster's and Partner on, that innovation, it gets down to at a level for all firms. And I think all of those apply and can be added to, show that value.
So we've come to the hour. Are there any final thoughts from either of you, or John as well?
No final questions. I'd just like to thank Adam and Rachel for joining us and sharing a bit more about how they're developing the culture of sharing collaboration and how they're showing their appreciation to people, talent and skills involved within their Autodesk Group network. It's really exciting, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you, John and Ralph. It's been a really great conversation today, and I think we're aligned and really rooted in solving a lot of the similar issues and always have people at the center. So it's been a great conversation today.
Thanks so much for the opportunity and the platform to talk and be in conversation. And I would encourage any of your listeners to reach out to us.
And a big thank you from my side. I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and the takeaways for me, I really like the point you made, Adam, about the disconnect between the capability of the technical tools that are available at the moment and the use of those tools in the industry. That's something I think we need to think about, and how do we close that gap. And I'm just seeing myself that a lot of people are putting a huge amount of time and effort into reinventing the wheel, often because they're unaware of what's out there and what's available. I spend a lot of time in the standards world, and people keep reinventing the wheel when there's industry recognized standards available for the things they're trying to solve. So thank you both for your time, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.